your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org. This is Edwin K. Morris, and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katharina Kuhn. You know me as Katharina Otto. And I live in a small town called Weinfelden. If you want to translate it in English, it's called Wine Town. It's in Switzerland, around 40 minutes away from Zurich. The most interesting thing near me is Lake Constance. It's the third largest freshwater lake in Central and Western Europe. So in summertime, everything takes place on, at, or in the lake. I absolutely love working in the field of knowledge and information management. It's my dream job and dream area to work in. So my current role is at PwC Switzerland in the capacity of Head of Tax and Legal Knowledge Management. The last book I read is not related to knowledge management. It's related to learning and lifelong learning. It's called The Dolphin Way from Dr. Shimi Kang. It was important because we're expecting our first child, and I wanted to learn everything about the art and science of inspiring children to develop their own internal drive and their ambition for learning in life, no matter what it be. The topic I can talk for hours about is knowledge management. That's what I'm here for. Empowering others, helping them learn, grow, and to continuously improve and reach their goals and thrive. And I have a lot of fun doing that and working together with other people. I'm inspired when I'm surrounded by people who know how to work in a team, who support each other, who pursue a common goal. That's very inspiring. And also having certain challenges that can be an inspiration for me as well, to learn new things and to grow, to define new areas where you want to get better at, right?
Well, Katharina, congratulations on the wedding and the newborn coming your way. I heard you say that you're researching how to make a kid want to learn. So how? Tell me, what's the magic juice that makes a kid want to learn?
Yes, it's not by, strictly defining. That's what the theory of the book is, by strictly pushing a child in the area where we as adults want to have it, but to let them find an area where they're very ambitious about, and then more support the child in that area and help them to grow with their own means, and not to say, okay, you have to study, you have to play the piano for 10 hours a day because
You'll be a doctor. Exactly. Yeah. Well, for some age groups, those were character building activities, to go do stuff you didn't really want to do. Oh, you will take piano. It's an interesting concept that you're actually going to ask the kid for some input, or at least watch what they're interested in and allow them to have some agency in what they pursue. Okay. Well, I'm glad we got that figured out. Now we're good. We're good. That's all we have to do. So let's go back to where your story started. Your story did not start with knowledge management in your sights. It was all law.
Yeah, true.
Tell me about where the juncture came in, or where the caboose showed up and said, jump on, that brought you to the KM world.
It was after my studies. So after I studied law and I was in my first job in that area, I already took over KM roles in that team where I was working, but they wouldn't call it knowledge management.
Okay.
I was just the person who always knew when something new came up, or a new tool was rolled out by the company, or I was just the person knowing what's going on in the company in terms of learning, and also where to find stuff and where to save stuff.
Right. So you became a guide for others in the organization to shortcut finding knowledge.
And that's what I really liked about it.
Yeah, but you said they didn't call it knowledge management. So what was the role?
I was working as an accountant and tax advisor in international taxation. I didn't have a special role called KM. It was just part of my job to do that and to know what was going on. So they didn't have a name.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I also didn't know it was KM at that time. I was just doing my job, right?
Yeah. Well, sure. But apparently it fit for your type of personality and your professional drive to be that connector, to be that broker, to constantly look at what's changed in the organization and start recommending to other people, oh, did you know this? Did you know that? That's a powerful position to be in, and it's not made for everybody. That requirement to be that is not made for every personality on the planet. So what made you prime to be that person?
To be honest, I have no idea.
Well,
I had no
all right,
idea
well
because
then,
it was just a personal interest.
I know, but what was the indicators to you in our early life? So let's go back to childhood years where you were in your formative years of learning what is important to you. Let's go back to your example of how you should raise kids. Mm-hmm. What were the impressions to you that made sense, that you saw somebody do that, or was there an opportunity where you did something that you're like, oh, I want to be like that?
Well, coming back to what I said in the beginning, I love people thriving and growing and working together. I love sharing, and I can work alone, but I love to be a team player. Mm-hmm. And I love to achieve goals and reach goals together. Yeah. What I liked about and still like about KM is the sharing part. Share and help others to work better, to be more efficient, to find what they need for their daily business. And they're happy because they're saving time and they can focus on new initiatives, right? So it's the sharing part. I think I had that early on. I just didn't know that there's an area you can actually work in to do that.
Well, was there something in college, or was there a family member that helped provide that view or that experience?
I think my whole family I have a huge family. Okay. It's always about sharing, caring for each other. So I think I learned it there. And then also perhaps in the area of law, my uncle, he's a lawyer, but I don't know if that inspired the knowledge management part. I think it's more inspiring about getting into law and the whole legal practice.
My perception of lawyers is not really good sharers. Am I wrong with that? I mean, there seems to be a competitive component to an attorney that is like a little tight-fisted with their knowledge and not really trying to help other people do their jobs. Is that a wrong view, or is that possible?
Yes, I think it's shifting. I think we are coming from an era where it was very closed up, and the more know-how you have and the less you share, the more valuable you are. And the more growth and revenue you can build up because you get the biggest clients and the biggest cases. So I think that was a part of the legal description, job description, do not share, right? Yeah. But I think it's shifting now in this new era.
What's driving that behavior change?
I think it's the change of is not able to work alone anymore because you have so many resources, you have so much information. You need others to define what is relevant and to curate it and to help you. And there's so many possibilities how to interpret. Also, with new areas of law coming up, I think it's more efficient to share and work together. Also, the clients, they don't want that anymore. Clients want collaboration, and they're asking for it.
How does PwC, and for the three people on the planet that don't know what that acronym stands for, go ahead and tell us what PwC is.
It's PricewaterhouseCoopers.
That do what now? What do they do?
So it's an accounting and tax and advisory consultancy.
And I think you told me they're represented in 200 countries. Is that right?
Around about, yes.
So you're a global organization. Mm-hmm. So how does a global organization effectively utilize knowledge sharing and those behaviors and knowledge management?
So we have local independent companies. That's something that most people don't know. They think of a global company as PwC. We are a global company, but we have independent companies, firms on a local territory level to be more independent and to operate independently. Right? Because sometimes for another country, something makes huge sense, but then for small Switzerland, for example, a new implementation doesn't make sense. So it would hinder us if we would implement it. And therefore also have our knowledge independently in each territory, which makes a lot of repositories all over the world. But we combine them. We have teams in the territory. So we have a KM team on EMEA level, for example. We have an Asian KM team in Australia and also on North and South America. There are KM teams. and there are regular exchanges. So we have communities and chats, and we have calls, webcasts, newsletters. Okay. So the knowledge is exchanged, and we know what's going on in other territories.
So the KM component in each one of these subgroups of PwC, they have built a community of practice of all KMers. Mm-hmm. But what does the role of KM in PwC, I guess, what are the services, or how do you interface with all the other components of PwC?
So for us, KM, for each country, it means slightly something different. But what you can say, what is in general mind, is to share, to curate, and to store knowledge, to support learning, to reuse, to support growth by defining processes, how we use our knowledge and how we spread it. So it's also about process and project management, as well as some countries go more in the information management sector, taxonomies, ontologies, the whole technology part. So it depends on where the country is standing. If you have the maturity level of KM, it depends on where the country is starting. Some start with the people aspect, some start with the technology aspect, and some start by simply organizing their data under the umbrella of KM. So it depends on where the country is. Overall, it's about sharing and reusing how and also saving knowledge when people leave the company.
What I keep hearing you use is the word reuse. I want to point that out because all I've been hearing in a majority of discussions and what I see in social media is around innovation. Like innovation is like the big thing. To me, reuse has more weight than innovation overall, because there's more opportunity for reuse to either save money or to economize something in an easier way than innovation. Is innovation part of the metric for KM?
Yeah, sure. I think it has to be a healthy mix of everything, and especially in the tax and legal area, where if you compare us to, let's say, pharmaceutical company, they develop new medication, it has to be new, it has to be against new diseases, it has to be innovative. But in the tax and legal area, there's a lot of change for sure, but there's also a lot that is not changing. So we're partially in Switzerland, partially working with laws from 1960s, right? And nothing has changed since then, because it's just that law and it works, right? So you can, if you have a simple wording, you can reuse it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can adapt it a bit slightly to the new case, but then you reuse it because the case as such, because the law hasn't changed, you don't need to be innovative in that area. But of course, the whole legal tech area with AI and the whole ChatGPT and all that's what's coming that way is a very interesting aspect, and therefore needs a whole lot of innovation.
I just was thinking this, and I'll just ask it. Does PwC, in conjunction with KM, are you tied in with an ethics department at all?
We have, of course, certain global standards that we have to adhere to, and there are strict global standards that lawyers and tax experts have to follow. And now we're also developing ethical standards for the use of AI. And of course, that's a huge topic, because we need to make sure that we are allowed to use it in engagements, and also be transparent about when and where we will use it. That's, I think, for me, clear, because what our clients want our approach to things, and they want to be in the loop how we come to conclusions, right? So we have very strict standards for that, of course.
That kind of gets to the heart of the question, so thank you for sharing that. Where does the future of all of this go? So I would have to presume that PwC spends a fair amount of time future-proofing itself on the technology side, just trying to stay ahead of the game. And you're saying AI is one of those fields, but do we get into the point where you're totally in a different framework of service providing, in that maybe you're not doing the face-to-face anymore and it's all online? Or I'm just curious how the business model is changing or evolving as technology makes it go that way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good question. Huge topic. It will change, but I think also certain areas will not change. Yeah, I think the human aspect and the human factor will not change. Also with AI, at least I can say that about our field. I don't know in other areas, but I think that the human factor will still be there and the decision making will still be done by humans.
Yeah.
And also what we see until today, our clients want the personal interaction, and there's nothing beyond a personal interaction. Talking to somebody, having exchange, seeing someone in person,
Yeah.
it is still different and much higher valued than online interaction. What I think is that the skill sets that people need are changing into more, we need critical thinkers, we need logical thinkers, people who evaluate where does that information come from, or is it the real deal, where are the sources pulled from, is this valid, and we cannot simply take the answers and consult with them.
There's definitely a need for vetting and validation and making sure the data is either cross-referenced or corroborated, and define and also validate. So if you had to bundle up 5 good skills for the person that's going to come into your department of KM and working with PwC in this law situation, what 5 skills do you need?
Curiosity, critical thinking, logical thinking, ambition, and collaborate. So to be a team player.
I was trying to draw out your initial of what this job when you first took it that was doing KM that wasn't labeled KM, because you're a natural sharer. You develop and you rely on developing others by giving them information or data or knowledge that helps them do their job. So that is a broker.
Knowledge broker.
Yeah, knowledge broker. So in some of the pieces of the skills that you just laid out kind of fit that. But boy, if you had to get somebody that is as good as you are, what would be the one skill?
The one skill they need to have?
To be like you, to be the natural connector.
I don't know the word for it.
May not be a skill. Yeah, may not be a skill. Think of attribute. I don't know. What I'm trying to get to is a pinpoint, because critical thinking is always good, but a critical thinker does not always make a knowledge broker. Trying to find what is that sweet, and you kind of touched on it. The last one of your 5 was communicator. What I heard was a good communicator. You said good collaborator, but similar concept.
I don't know the word for it. It needs to be somebody who's curious and who's connecting the dots, who's seeing the big picture. It's like more a holistic view on things, perhaps. Perhaps it's an overall, to not only focus on, I have to, if I consult this client, can this be valuable for X, Y, Z teams as well? And how can I find those people with that X, Y, Z clients as well? And it's, seeing the whole picture.
Okay, so I think we'll pin that tail on the donkey, because I think you're right. I think being able to have the vision and understanding of all the facets of the enterprise, or at least to a larger scope than their immediate cubicle, somebody that can see connections and second and third order effects around them. I think you're right. And I brought that up because there was a recent conversation I had, and they used the word generosity. And it really stuck with me, because I think there's some hint to truth to that, because if you're a generous person, meaning you're other directed, you're other focused, you're, in sympathetic, empathetic, all those things that make a generous person, I almost think there's a natural fit in there to be a good KMer.
That's interesting. Yes.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. I asked that person, I said, so in a job interview for a KMer, you can scratch all the normal HR required questions and blah, 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 and just say, show me where you're generous. How are you generous? Right? So you're looking for, well, I volunteered at the hospice. I help out the local fire department. I run, whatever. You're always participating and engaging in other ways than just your job. I'm a coach, whatever. And I think there's something to that.
That's very interesting. So it's being generous. Yes. I wanted to say perhaps it's also entrepreneurial spirit, but then perhaps you cannot say 100% because some entrepreneurs are also not generous, but still successful.
Exactly. Yeah, well put. All right, so let's wrap this all up on your big definition of what knowledge management is.
My big definition what knowledge management is, I think it's sharing. I think it's reusing. I think it's being generous. Now we defined it as well. But having a holistic, so in one sentence, for me, in my area of expertise, it's having a holistic view on projects and processes and what knowledge is needed in each of the process steps, and to optimize and define them, reuse them, and improve them. That's what I would say is KM in my area.
If you had to advise someone that is starting a knowledge management effort in any size organization, but they were tagged as you're going to do this, what would be your recommendation for a resource for them?
I recently had that another country approaching me to talk about what I did in the beginning and how I implemented KM in Switzerland. And it was a journey. It was a 10-year journey. It was a lot of trial and error. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of speaker engagements and convincing and finding the needle in the haystack, what works and what doesn't. I think what is the most important thing about a KM program is you have buy-in from leadership. And that you match it. Secondly, or first thing, before you have buy-in, you have to match KM efforts to the business goals. I see that a lot, that people are doing a great job and they're doing KM and they're having great initiatives and they're creating communities of practice and all that thing. And it's very nice, but it's not at all what the business is aiming to do. And therefore it doesn't generate buy-in. It's not seen, it's not valued. So if you're doing KM for KM purposes, you're about to fail fast. And if you match it to the business plan, the business goals, and leadership can actually see how you generate value in that area. Because at the end of the day, what I heard a lot from people starting over with the KM program is, we're a cost center. So what value do you bring? You're generating costs. Yeah. But when you switch it around, you can measure and benchmark KM pretty well, actually, and therefore show.
Give me an example of how you benchmark KM.
For us, it's how many times does people save by searching and waiting for information, for example. How easy is it for them? So we measure the time that they saved. They were waiting 5 to 10 hours for information to be brought to them, or by finding the system, finding the right expert. If we minimize it to 2 to 3 hours, we have a difference that we can measure, and that's your number.
That's a huge cost savings.
And if you take 200,000 plus employees and you go from 7 hours to 2 hours, you have 5 hours per person. That's coming into billions that you save at the company. And that's where you have the seat at the table, right? A lot of KM initiatives fail to prove that and to ask themselves, what problems am I solving here? And how can I actually measure what I'm doing at the end of the day or at the end of the year? So that would be my advice.
Well, I think that's pretty sound advice, Katharina. I appreciate your time here, and good luck and success with raising that inquisitive mind.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It was very, very fun.
Thank you for listening to Because You Need to Know, the reference podcast in knowledge management. My name is Soni Toneme. As an art administrator, Because You Need to Know has been my go-to podcast and has helped me hone my management skills. Please consider sponsoring the podcast with your business.
Just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org.